it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using a couple of different Lawn Fawn sets. I'm using the Jump for Joy, Forest Feast, and the Happy Harvest. And then I will also be using this 6x6 pad from Echo Park. It's called A Perfect Autumn by Lori Whitlock. I'm going to be coloring my images with Copic markers today, and I've got quite a number of them. I wanted to make a nice full scene card. These are my favorite, and I thought I'd go ahead and do that today. I was in the mood to do a lot of coloring. So I'm going to be starting out by placing a little post-it note next to my images there just so I can send out the casts for you to see. And I'm going to start with the hedgehogs today. So I'm using a number of different browns. I've got the E51, E53, E55, E57, and E59. So I'll use the lighter 3 shades on their bodies and then the darker 3 shades on the spine. So I'm starting out with the middle shade of the 5, which is the E55, and I'm just coloring in right along the edge of their spines, kind of giving their bodies a little bit of shadow. I'm also going to shade on the underside of their arms and on the arm and leg that's on the other side of their body there sticking out, and a little bit under their chins as well. And then I'm going to blend that in with the E53, just trying to create a nice transition, and then I'll fill everything in with the E51. I'll pull in a little R20 for their cheeks and also just the inside of their ears, which is just super small, but it's nice to add that little bit of color there. Then I'm going to come in with that E55, and that one is a chow marker. That's why the cap is a little bit different. And I'm going to do a little bit of flicking to create the spine. So I'm going to be turning my paper in the direction that is comfortable for me to do that. So don't be afraid to turn your paper when you need to. And then I'm going to grab that E59, which is my darkest, and I'm just going to go right over top, just filling in some of that area with that darker color just to add a lot of depth and dimension to the little spikes there. And again, just continue turning that paper so that I get nice thin little flicks so that it really has that look of the spines. When I finish that, I'm just going to go back to my E55 and add a bit here and there just to kind of fill in some of the white spaces. I don't mind some of them because they do look like highlights, but I just wanted to add a bit more color in there. My owl is also going to be brown, so I'm going in on his body with the E53, and I'm just kind of outlining his the area on the front and also around his little feathers there. And then I'm going to blend that in with the E51, just going around the edge and doing small little circles to make those two markers blend. And I'm actually also going to add in the E50 just to give him a little bit of variation. I didn't want him to look like he's exactly the same color as the hedgehog. So for the outer portion of his body, I'm starting with my darkest shade, which is the E59. And again, just giving a little bit of shadow towards the extreme outer edge so that he looks a little bit more three-dimensional. And then I'm going to bring that color into the center with the E57, just leaving the middle portion for the lightest highlight, which will be filled in with the E55. For the fox, I'm using YR14, YR16, and YR18. I'm going to start with the YR18 and add my shadows once again. Just highlighting like the bottom of his tail because it's kind of on the behind of his body, so there would be shadows there. Also anything that's along the outside edge or on the opposite side of his body is going to be cast in shadow. So I'll blend that out with the YR16 for the mid-tone, just bringing that color down towards the right side there. And then I will finish with the YR14, just filling everything in. I did feel like my darkest shadows got a little bit lost when I added all three of these colors. They are quite similar, especially the YR14 and the YR16. So I did go back and grab the YR18 and just add those darkest shadows back in a bit, just to bring those back to life. And I just blended out the very edge of that with the mid-tone, the YR16. For the white areas of his body, the tip of his tail and his face there, I'm just going to bring in a tiny bit of E50 to the edge just to add a little bit of color to the white. And then I also will pull in the R20 to color in the inside of his ear and give him a little rosy cheek. And I'll give the owl some rosy cheeks as well. For the rest of his ears and his paws, I'm going to pull in that E57 once again just to add a little bit of contrast, give him some little dark socks on his little feet there. While I have out my oranges, I'm going to go ahead and use the YR16 to color in the owl's little beak and feet, and I added a little shading with the YR18. And then I'm going to use those same two colors on my bird's beak as well. Since I have them out, I might as well use them now. And then I'm also going to color the pumpkins with those three shades. So I'll leave in the coloring of the largest one, and then just for the sake of the length of the video, I'm going to cut out the coloring of the other two, which are exactly the same. I'm just using the YR18 as my darkest, kind of coming in from the top edge there, and then blending towards the center with the YR16, and then filling in everything with the YR14. And then once again, just like on the fox, I went back to my darkest and just added a bit more shadow. E57 once again for the little pumpkin stem. The bird is actually supposed to be a crow, but I decided to make it a robin for today. I'm trying to stick with a particular color palette here. It's actually for the current Lawn Fanatics challenge. There is a mood board and a color palette there, so that's where I'm going off of. So I'm just using that E57, E55, E53 to color in the body of the bird and also the handle of the rake. And then I'm pulling in a new pink combination to me. This is kind of like a rosy pinkish red. And for that I'm using the R35, R43, and then R20. So these don't seem like they would go together, but according to my Copic color chart, they should work, and they did work. So I started with that R35 as my darkest, and then blended out with the R43, and then the R20 as my lightest. And I kind of worked back and forth on the body, pulling back in that E53 to just help that blend on the robin's belly there. Now I'm also going to use these three shades to color in my little apple. I just wanted to have another little bright pop of color on the card, kind of an unexpected pop of color. So I'll just blend those three shades together, keeping the darkest in the lower right hand and then the lightest in the upper left. So now I've got all these warm tones going, and I wanted to add a little bit of a cool tone, and I'm using the BG45 and the BG49 for that. And I'm going to use those to color in the handle of my rake. And then also the tiny leaf on the apple, just to keep the color palette consistent. The last color combination I'm going to pull in is some yellows, and it's the Y13 and Y17. And actually I'm going to pull in the Y15 in just a minute because these two didn't blend well enough. And I'm going to start coloring in some of my leaves in my leaf pile, and then also one of the spare leaves as well. And then the rest of the leaves I'm going to color it with the same exact combinations that I've used on all the other images thus far. So I'm not going to show those in the video since you've already seen me use those combinations on other things, and this video is already quite long. But I'll just finish those up and then die cut all my images. Moving on to my background, I'm taking a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock here, and I'm going to use three different shades of Distress ink. This is the Mustard Seed, the Worn Lipstick, and the Spun Sugar. And the reason I'm using the Bristol Smooth is because you get a really nice blend on this paper. It's really hard to get those super harsh lines that you get on cardstock sometimes if you don't start far enough off the paper or you just get harsh lines. It just blends right away on this smooth surface because it takes a lot longer for it to soak into the paper. So you can kind of blend out any mistakes that you make. So I'm going to just finish off the top here with the spun sugar. I put the mustard seed on the bottom and the worn lipstick in the center because I wanted to create a gradient sky going from kind of a yellow to kind of peachy and then top with the pink. But I wasn't feeling like I was getting a pink shade in the center there. It was kind of going from yellow to orange to peachy. And so I wanted this more vibrant color that I was thinking of and picturing in my mind. So I brought in the picked raspberry, and I was much happier with that. And then I just went back over the transitions there and made sure that I blended everything nice and smooth. And I just held it down with a Post-it note to keep my hands a little bit clean. I die cut that down with the Lawn Fawn stitch rectangle stackables, and then I die cut some MFT hot cocoa cardstock using the Lawn Fawn stitch tree borders and the Simple Stitch hillside borders dies. And I'm going to take some Tombow Mono multi-glue and just add a bit of that to the back of the tree panel. I'm also going to dot just a tiny dab on the backs of these trees. They are very delicate and I just want to make sure that they don't get bent in the process of building this card. And I'll just set an acrylic block on top of that to help that dry into place. Then I'm going to take some Scotch 3M foam tape and just add that to the back of the Stitch Hillside border. And then I can go ahead and add that down at the bottom, just making sure to line that up nice and straight. That's going to give me a lot of dimension on my card. So I've got my little colored and die cut images off to the side here, and now I can begin to adhere these to my card. I'm going to use some foam tape on some of the images and places, and other images I'm just going to glue flat to the card just to make sure that I have that depth of scene here. So now you can see the rest of that leaf pile all colored in. I went ahead and used all those shades like I mentioned, and I think it came together really nicely. So I'm going to add the little hedgehog that's from the new Forest Feast stamp set off to the right, and then I'm going to add a dab of glue there right to his hand so that I can give him the little apple to hold. Jumping in leaf piles is hungry work, so he's going to have a little snack. And then I'm going to take my little owl and add him to the top of the back hill, and he's going to be holding the little rake, so he'll be sweeping up the leaves for his friends to jump into. And the pumpkins I'm just going to add here and there to kind of just fill in the scene. Like I mentioned, I wanted it to be a nice and full one. I just love scenes where there's a lot going on and there's just a lot to look at. The other hedgehog I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of and just tuck him right into the top of the leaves because he's just jumping in. And then I'm going to use the extra little leaves to just add some movement to the rest of my card. I'll add the other small pumpkin up on the far hill in the back there, and then I have my robin up in the sky. I didn't press that down too hard yet though because I knew I'm going to be moving it. And then I just took my last two leaves and just tucked those in to just kind of spread the color around the card a bit more. Then I put the whole panel into my mini Misty, and I'm going to stamp the Happy Harvest sentiment from the Happy Harvest stamp set with some Lawn Fawn walnut ink. I'm going to make sure to clean off the base of my Misty so I don't smudge any ink on my panel since there are things that are popped up. And then I'll just be a little bit more careful inking a second time there. And I'm actually going to ink that up a third time just because I wanted the sentiment to be really bold and dark on that background. And now that that sentiment is on there, I can go ahead and readjust that little robin and get him situated exactly where I want him. I wasn't quite sure where he was going to go, but I finally decided that he should be in on the action too, not off to the side. Now that did leave a spot in the top right corner that looked a little empty. So I went to the dish that I keep on my desk for colored images, and I found a little leaf that was colored in the same yellow combo. So I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of that and pop that up in the top right corner, and that is going to complete our scene there. Now, while I have that mini Misty out, I want to go ahead and stamp a insert for my card. Since I'm using dark cardstock, I wanted to add something that you could write on legibly. So I used the Lawn Fawn outside in stitch rectangle dies, and I took the little squirrel from the Forest Feast stamp set, and the sentiment is also from that stamp set, and then the two leaves from the Jump for Joy, and that is going to create a really nice little sentiment cluster right along the bottom edge of that insert. So my card base is that same MFT Hot Cocoa cardstock that I used for the trees and the hillside border on the front of the card. So I'm just going to glue my little insert in with some Tombow Mono multi-glue, and then I'm also going to glue some pattern paper to the outside of my card, and this was die cut with the Lawn Fawn outside in rectangles as well. So I'll just smooth that into place, and then I'll go ahead and pull the release paper off the foam tape on the back of the card here. That's going to give me a nice bit of dimension as well. And then I'm going to just center that right over that pattern paper so I have that nice blue edge peeking through that matches the blue in our leaves and our rake. And I'll just pop that right over top. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside. I think it came out super cute, and I really enjoyed this color palette for something different. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. That lets me know that you're interested in more videos like these. Here's an extra couple videos you may also find interesting, and you can always click on my photo to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. I would really appreciate it. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.